Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, another season. Let's watch.
¿Cómo te pareció el apartamento?
Es linda, pero ¿puede ayudarme con alquilar?
No cuento esa cantidad de dinero.
¿Cuánto tú puedes ayudarme?
Yo puedo ayudarte con 5,000 pesos de mi sueldo. No puedo más.
5,000 pesos. Es $90. ¿Qué yo hago con eso?
No sé, es lo que puedo.
So she asks him, so she's the one looking for a place. She's the one looking for a nice apartment. And it's her thing. And he's just along for the ride. And he can't afford to move out of his parents' house. And she knows that. And so she finds a nice place. And it's pretty expensive. And then she turns to him. He had nothing to do with choosing this place. She says to him, are you going to help with rent here? And he says, okay, how much can you help? And he says, well, I guess maybe 5,000 pesos. Then she immediately ridicules him, sarcastically, like rolls her eyes at him, laughs at him, she's literally laughing at him.
¿Cuánto tú puedes ayudarme?
Yo puedo ayudarte con 5,000 pesos de mi sueldo. No puedo más.
5,000 pesos?
It's so... Now, maybe he is ridiculous. Maybe his finances are terrible. Maybe he is extremely irresponsible. I don't know. But I do know that she belittles him. That I do know. Even if he's irresponsible, that doesn't justify what she does to him emotionally and verbally. So her behavior is so loud that it eclipses any opportunity for me to even see if she has a reason to actually, because at this point, I have no idea if any of her criticisms of him are justified because her behavior is so over the top that I just concentrate on that. It's like, no, you can't, even if you're right, you can't talk to someone like that. It's not okay. It's hurtful. But he doesn't stand up for himself. And I think that they fit together in this way. He either personality-wise is passive or he is financially desperate enough to put up with this in order to make it happen. He might also be in love with her as well, even in that scenario. So I can't tell. There's a chance that, and if y'all have watched ahead, I'm a little bit behind here. There's a chance that you know that down the line he actually exhibits irresponsibility. He might even be exhibiting it here, and I just can't really detect it or something. And in that situation, we'd be looking at an exaggerated version of the Asuelu and Kalani relationship, in that Kalani would, at times, it wasn't as bad as this, but she would at times really talk down to Asuelu. And Asuelu was an underfunctioner, at least the way it seemed at times, right? He would work half-time at a coffee shop and go out and drink beer with his friends all night, and he wouldn't take care of the kids and, that kind of stuff. That one birthday party where he was butthurt and he hid in the bedroom and he wouldn't even celebrate his son's birthday, that kind of thing. So in that situation, Asuelu's underfunctioning was so loud that it eclipsed Kalani's belittling and overfunctioning behaviors as well. The way that Kalani would just roll her eyes and just be like, "Oh my God, if you have an underfunctioning partner, you can talk about that with them. You can complain, you can request, you can get frustrated. You can't belittle, infantilize, overfunction, and put people down. You can't make people feel small. You can't make them out to be an idiot. And plus, that doesn't help. If someone already believes that they're an idiot and they're shameful about their failures in life, to continually berate them for being a failure is not going to help. It's just going to make matters worse. So, I don't know. But all I see is this. She asked him, unless I'm not understanding this right, she asked him, can you help rent on the apartment that I chose that's over expensive? And he says yes. He didn't have to say yes. He'd be like, I can't afford it. I live with my parents. I can't afford anything at this point. And I'm trying to get a business off the ground. All my extra money is going into building the business. You know that. But he doesn't say that. He says, I'll give you 5,000 pesos. And she laughs at him immediately. 5,000 pesos?
¿Cuánto tú puedes ayudarme?
Yo puedo ayudarte con 5,000 pesos de mi sueldo. No puedo más.
5,000 pesos? Es $90. ¿Qué yo hago con eso?
All right, and then she says, what can I do with that? That's so little money. Why are you insult me with this offer? And it's like, well, you asked me how much I could afford. Have you not looked around? Have you not seen the conditions I live in my family? Have you not noticed I work 2 jobs and I own my own business and I'm barely getting by? Is that lost on you? Have you noticed the economy of Dominican Republic? Has that completely gone over your head?
No sé, es lo que puedo.
Tú estás loco. Tú comes 5,000 pesos por desayuno.
So she's accusing him of having a 5,000 peso breakfast, and he agrees. I'm guessing that means that they both went to breakfast and she was paying and he just ordered something. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, so there's a chance that he's inadvertently playing into her hand, because if he really wanted to prove to her that he's trying to be ultra responsible, he would say, we can't go to a place like this because that is 5,000 pesos, and that's like half of the salary of one of my employees, and so it feels weird for you to pay that. I think we should really try to save our money because I'm trying to get this business out there. Maybe if he said that, it would have put the kibosh on this ridiculing that she has, and so, I don't know.
Yo te dije, yo no lo puedo pagar. En lo que yo pueda te ayudo, tú sabes.
Ok, una pregunta, porque necesito balance en esta relación. Es importante a mí. ¿Tú cocinas? ¿Tú limpias toda la casa cada día? Yo necesito tú hacer cosas en la casa.
Cuando no estoy haciendo nada, si no estoy trabajando. Pero tú no piensas, yo vengo de trabajar, tú en la casa, entonces para yo ponerme a hacer cosas.
Okay, well, so I don't know where this is headed, but I think what she is introducing is, okay, well, fine, but if we're both going to be working, I think is what she's saying, then we're going to split up the chores, because each of us should have balance around that. But there's a possibility, because he's basically saying I'm not doing any housework, and there's a possibility that he's saying that because he thinks, well, you're not going to be working. I'm going to be working 2 jobs and owning a business. You can do the housework. I still don't think that's necessarily fair entirely, because all of it, but I don't know what's happening. Or he is sexist and thinks that even if you're both working full, I don't know, let's watch.
Pero yo trabajo en la casa.
Sí, yo trabajo afuera.
So, ¿por qué yo trabajo en la casa? Yo necesito hacer más cosas porque yo trabajando en la casa. Yo pagar por todo, tú necesitas hacer las cosas. Tú estás mi esposa.
Well, that's not going to help. You're trying to get a man in I'm guessing a traditional masculine culture to agree to do housework, and your strategy is to call him a woman. You're my wife, so you're going to do the work, even though he has 2 jobs and he has a business. Am I missing something? Now, she has every right to say, if we're both working, we're going to split the chores, 100%. And I've been very frustrated with men in this conversation. So many men will be like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I'm the man. You're like, but do you understand the logic? She works full-time, you work full-time, so why should she do all the housework and take care of the kids all the time, and you get to just watch TV and play video games? Like, does that, and, we'll go over it, and then the husband will be like, but I'm the man. I'll just be like, God. I mean, the hold of toxic masculinity that some people have over their brains, it's just like, it's like talking to a wall. I've been there before in therapy, and I've been very frustrated, and I didn't get immediately frustrated. This is after several sessions of me and the wife trying to lay out and then we would say, okay, well, how about everyone just keep track of exactly how much time they spend at work, like down to the 15-minute mark, and how much money or how much time you spend on chores, and maybe even how intense it is. And then you'll come in and we'll compare notes. And then you even present that. And the husband's like, yeah, that's basically what it is. She works about 40 hours a week, and I work about 45 hours a week. And then she spends about, it looks like about 60 hours a week on chores, and I spend about 5 hours a week on chores. And yeah, that looks about right. What do you mean? Well, I mean, I'm helping, right? I'm helping out. I help out. And you're just like, oh my God. what I want to say, and I have said this to men, is just like, if your self-worth and your masculinity is that fragile that you can't do housework, and then I don't know what to say, because that is not much of a man in my book. A real man can allow themselves to break from tradition and do some housework. A real man would try to be a good family member. A real man stands up and protects their family and really rises to the occasion, you know? Do you think and I try to evoke, I don't know if I said this, but it comes to mind. Do you think the frontier people who were heading out west, who were colonializing the West and taking the land away from Native Americans, do you think that when they were trying to get a life together and building a log cabin and hunting deer and all that kind of stuff and having kids, do you think that the husband made his wife do everything? No, he probably worked all day long, you know? And then, of course, I just predict the toxic male would say, like, well, yeah, he was doing man stuff, like shooting stuff. I could do stuff like that. It's like, well, no one needs you to shoot anything. You can just go to the store and buy the meat if you want. It's like, well, that's woman's work. Here we go again.
Mira, aquí el hombre trabaja, la mujer trabaja, la mujer hace oficio en la casa.
Oh, did I miss something? So he's saying here, even when men and women both work, the woman still does the housework. Is that what he's saying? My God.
Yo trabajo en la casa, yo necesito hacer más cosas porque yo trabajando en la casa. Yo pagar por todo, tú no necesitas hacer las cosas. Tú estás mi esposa.
Mira, aquí el hombre trabaja, la mujer trabaja, la mujer hace oficio en la casa.
Yeah, that appears what he's saying. So when you live in a patriarchy, when you live in a man-controlled world, this is what you get. This is what you can get away with. Men, because they have all the power, are just like, well, this is the way that it is, live with it. And if you don't like it, then you're just going to suffer because you don't have any power in this world. I don't know if that's what he's saying or he's trying to say, or I don't know what's going on. Or he has that little self-esteem that he can't break from tradition, or it's that bad, the toxic masculinity. I mean, I have heard in a lot of Latin American countries that the men and the machismo thing is extreme. Of course, there's some variability, of course. I know men from Latin America. Some of my best friend, Humberto, the co-host, co-owner, actually, of this podcast, is from Colombia, and he has some of that, but not much. I have some of it because I was indoctrinated into a toxic masculine culture in America. So is it that we're seeing? I don't know. What do people think?
¿Y qué hace hombres? I have historically had very codependent relationships. It was like I was always giving so much of myself to someone else who was not giving anything back.
All right, well, that's telling. Total speculation. I can't know anything about these people. It's edited. Who knows? It's all speculation. But the way she treats him is very much in line with what I would call a controlling, codependent person. The concept of codependency, as you know, when I yammer about it, is misunderstood on the internet and in popular culture. A lot of people think codependent means dependent. It's not dependency. It's actually the opposite. Where you have a dependent person, you will often have a codependent person. But the problem is the word codependent is not related to the word dependent. It's a different derivation of the word. The codependent was a co-chemically dependent or a co-alcoholic. And the dependent person is the way it sounds, in that they're overly dependent, the dependent personality disordered person. So, or they're on the spectrum. And she's been exhibiting that there's different types. I did a whole deep dive and really contemplated the different types that I've seen of codependency. And what I found that there was the accommodating type of codependency where they are over-functioning, but they're always trying to please. And they don't really overtly control. It is sort of controlling, but they're not criticizing or putting down. They're just always trying to pick up pieces around the underfunctioner. And then you have the controlling type, which she exhibits. I can't know if she has that, but that's what it looks like to me, which is what we've been seeing. And then there's a rare third type, which is the chameleon type that I identified. I've seen this. It's not very common, but the overfunctioner, the codependent person, will chameleonize their life to be like the underfunctioner. They'll essentially become underfunctioning with them by choice because they want to validate the under-functioner so that their partner feels better or something. And so codependent people have a lot of reasons as to why they do this. And I go into that in the deep dive. But it tends to be a pattern. They tend to always be over-functioning and controlling and codependent and belittling of their partners because it's a need of theirs. It's a personality disorder. It's not technically in the literature, but I identify it as a personality disorder because it has all the underpinnings and all the qualities of a personality disorder. It's based on past relational traumas and schemas. It has massive perceptual problems. The person does not see themselves. You know, when someone has an anxiety disorder, typically they know, you know, it's like, yeah, I have an anxiety problem, or I have depression or something like that. People with personality disorders, they think everyone else is crazy, and codependent people tend to be that way. It's like, you don't understand. You know, my husband, he's a complete idiot about money. You don't understand. I have to step in because if I don't, he's going to ruin everything. And you find out that that's not true, or the codependent person basically berated the person into that under-functioning person where they're just cowed into this terrified place where they're just like, okay, fine, I'm an idiot. You do everything. So, and or codependent people will find under-functioning people. Tanya found Sinjin, who seemingly might have had an alcohol problem. I mean, it was pretty severe. He was, I think, talking about drinking all day, every day, and proud of it, that kind of thing. Don't quote me on that. And, you know, he comes across as carefree / irresponsible. And so codependent people will, any of the types, whether you have the accommodating, controlling, or chameleon type, they will always seek out an underfunctioner because they need that other side for their various personality disordered reasons. So when she identifies that she's had a lot of codependent relationships in the past, and she gives evidence that she's actually using the proper definition. I didn't define codependency, and it's not technically a clinical term, but it is more and more being used in the clinical literature. And anyway, point is that she's using the word codependency in what I would say is the consensus sound version of the definition by saying, I was always the one taking care of someone. And codependent people will seek underfunctioners, and they will socialize people into becoming underfunctioners. They will keep them there because they need that to be true. It's not conscious, but that's what happens. And so she just said that she has a pattern of that, which lends itself to this conceptualization. I can't know for sure, but it is a tick in the column that is supportive of that conceptualization.
Y el hombre trabaja, la mujer trabaja, la mujer hace oficio en la casa.
¿Y qué hace hombres? I have historically had very codependent relationships. It was like I was always giving so much of myself to someone else who was not giving anything back. And I feel like
And if she were to come to me, or someone like this, I should say, were to come to me for therapy, because I don't think I would ever treat a cast member if they were to come to me. One, I don't have any open spots in my practice, and I haven't had for years, but I just think it would be ethically dubious for me to treat any of these people. But anyway, if someone like this came to me and they told me about their problems, and they didn't know that they had a problem to the extent that I started to detect, then I would work with them, because it seems like she's trying to correct for the past. She's like, something went wrong in the past, and she has enough self-awareness to say, I had a very codependent way. But it kind of depends on how she views it. If she's like, I always allowed myself to be walked on. I was the doormat because I let these underfunctioners mooch off me, essentially. If that's how she sees it, that wouldn't be what I would focus on. I would focus on how she is actually in need of an underfunctioner, that she chooses them and or socializes them to be underfunctioning, that she berates them and belittles them and takes over their life such that they end up just kind of throwing their hands up and going, well, I guess if she's going to do everything. If you've ever been around a micromanager, this is what can happen. If you have a boss or a spouse or someone who's always nitpicking you and micromanaging you, if you have a personality of a certain type, or even if you're kind of average, it's really tempting to just be like, fine, you do it. Because it's so much easier if they're going to do it and resent you than if you're going to do it and they're constantly putting you down, say, oh, you missed a spot. Oh, you did that wrong. You did it. You know, it's like, fine, okay, fine, you do it. You know, it's easier if you think of me as an idiot and as an irresponsible person than for me to even try. And of course, codependent people will look for people that will tend to do that anyway, right? There are signs of people that look like that, right? So if I were to work with her or someone like this, I would try to help her to see that. I would obviously go back to her childhood and make those connections as to why she developed that. Maybe she was parentified. Often people like this were parentified growing up. And then as a solution, instead of doing what she's doing here, her solution is she's like, I'm not going to pay. So that's interesting. So as people without therapy or without enough therapy try to emerge out of a pattern, they often will have an interim phase or an initial phase that is basically the same as the problem, but it feels very different from them. Like a friend of mine, Umberto, who is my co-host on the podcast, he, without going into full detail, we've talked about it on the audio podcast, but he, because of his relational traumas growing up, he was constantly trying to please everyone, and he would pay for everything. He would give people money. He would loan people money, dubious loans that he didn't know if he'd ever get back. He would take everyone out to dinner and spend thousands of dollars, and he was always just paying and paying, and it just never registered to him that he was doing that. And then as time went on, his wife eventually was like, you can't do that anymore. You're ruining us financially, right? And it was a long time of that, many years before, and a lot of therapy before he finally realized, yeah, I need to stop doing that. So he made a decision, which was healthy, that he wasn't going to do that anymore. But it was a half measure because it's kind of complicated. Because by this time, I'm in a relationship with him, and we were in a band project together, and he wanted to hire this consultant, and I didn't want to hire the consultant. Plus, I couldn't afford it back then. And so he pressured me to pay for my portion. He didn't make me pay for it, but he made me pay my portion. But I didn't want to pay anything for it. But he interpreted me saying to him, I don't want to pay for this. He interpreted it as me being a mooch off him. But I didn't want the consultant to begin with. And I thought it was a mistake to hire the consultant to begin with. And so he was putting me in an impossible situation. He's like, he's unilaterally making a choice. We're definitely getting to the consultant, and you better pay, because I'm not going to pay for everything, because that's what I used to do. So it's a half measure. Eventually, he would get to a place where he would not impose that on other people. You know what I mean? So what she's doing is she's saying, I think, is I'm never going to pay again. I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm not going to do that. But she's setting up a situation where it's almost inevitable because of the place that she's choosing to live in. The only way she would get away with not paying for everything is if she actually moved in with the family, right? Because that's the only thing he can afford, is my impression of it, right? The other thing is she might fully understand the machismo culture, and she might fully understand that men in this culture, including Yohan, will never do housework. And so she might unconsciously or even consciously understand that this relationship dynamic is doomed, where she's always going to be over-functioning and he's always going to be under-functioning, and that plays into what she wants to happen. The other thing is, and I think this is more important, is that even though she's trying to progress, she's trying to not do what she did in the past, she's inadvertently completely recreating it emotionally. She doesn't realize that she's participating in it. She might even be causing it entirely by the way that she sees the world, and by the way that she talks to other people, by the way she belittles other people, and by how triggered she gets. Parentified people, I don't know if that's her, but parentified people are often very angry and very resentful for needing to take care of their parents and needing to pick up the pieces around them, that kind of thing, or being put in a position where they had to take care of their younger siblings or something like that. And they have a lot of anger, and they are justified to be angry, but they take it out on their spouses by being belittling and by putting someone down and by forcing other people into a position with the parentified child was taking care of their parent was under functioning. And the codependent person is very upset about that. They're very resentful naturally. And then they move on in life and they marry someone and they find someone that resembles their parent. We often do this. And then they engage in this codependent relationship and they're angry. And half or more of their anger is actually being displaced from their parents. They really want to get angry at their parents, but they know that's not going to work out. So they're trying to make it work this time. And so it's like a lot of over anger and a lot of over belittling that comes out. So if I were working with someone like this, I would try to heal from those relational injuries, from those relational traumas. And it might take a while, and it's a lot of self-awareness And I might recommend couple therapy so that they can work on that overfunctioning, because he's participating in the underfunctioning, I think, at least a little bit, if not a lot. I can't really tell.
I've moved beyond that. So, could I bankroll our future forever? Yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. I have no desire to support a grown-ass man for the rest of my life.
And isn't it interesting that he's like, I want to go to the States and I want to get a better job and I want to start getting a career going. It's really hard to get a career going in this town, I think is what he's saying. But she's preventing him from doing that.
If I'm doing all the investing, both financially and physically, I'm going to feel really resentful and it's not going to be a relationship that makes me happy.
Right. I think that's an old feeling for her that is not only massively present in her previous relationships, but also going back to when she was a child.
Te molesta pagar por todo y te molesta cocinar a tu esposo.
Pero yo no quiero trabajar más.
Cocinar no es un trabajo. Tú le estás cocinando a tu esposo. Es un trabajo.
Sí. I'm worried that if Yohan can't find a way to meet me halfway and compromise, that this relationship isn't going to survive. Yo quiero mirar a un otro.
All right, well, that does it for that episode, everyone. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.